It's lovely just to celebrate the times of the year and festivals like harvest. These things give shape to our lives as they are repeated year after year. Why are you having a party? Do you need any other excuse to party? When all is well, you sound like a pompous prat to point out that Jesus is the reason for the season. Even the names that we're called by and large, have lost touch with their meaning. They've become enjoyable sounds which don't bother with meaning. I will add to the story of the child who, on first hearing the Christmas story, asked why they gave the baby a swear word for a name. I was once asked to baptize a wee girl whose parents had called her Kyrie. That lovely sound of the Greek words in prayers of confession through the ages. Kyrie, Lord, have mercy, eleison. When all is well, meaning doesn't matter. So what sort of lovely sound do you think we might use for Climate Sunday? It's been a beautiful game to argue and debate when the outcome really doesn't matter, or to look for balance in arguments even when the evidence doesn't support that. I would be doing none of you any favour if I simply said that to hold a climate denying point of view is perfectly all right and you're entitled to be misinformed in your opinion about a firmly established situation which threatens everything you love and value. Would it be loving not to bother to disagree with that? Perhaps that's where the gospel strategy of reliable, trusted witnesses comes in from Matthew 18. When someone is manifestly mistaken, whom will they trust to correct them with goodwill and without malice? That the decision-making process of the URC led to a unanimous decision to switch investment from fossil fuels, though, of course, in the Synod of Scotland, we were ahead of the pack. That unanimity was a demonstration of this very gospel. People were convinced rather than defeated. More than 2 or 3 came together. Yet again, on climate issues, the model of winner takes all falls apart. Climate science offers a testimony which we can take note of or ignore to our cost. In the Gospel of Matthew, there's also a sting in the tail, in the instruction to treat offenders as a Gentile and a tax collector. That is, of those in particular need of support to change their mind and their ways. The aim is always reconciliation, not exclusion. Globally, we don't have anywhere to go, nowhere to send our offenders away to, and might we ourselves be these offenders? Although English speakers took in the name of an Anglo-Saxon deity for Easter, to label what other languages link directly with Passover, English translations have always brought through the Hebrew word Pesach as pass over. Something's going on, someone's being passed over. In Exodus, and in contradiction to the world today, the last are first. Those who suffer injustice avoid the worst of the plagues, where plagues are presented as entirely avoidable, preventable environmental disasters, and decisively just behaviour by nations and rulers is the key to such avoidance. The tragedy remains, though, that wildlife and the ecosystems always suffer because of the all too human injustice of those like the Pharaoh, or perhaps those who rely on fossil fuels for their culture. All life shares the fate that we choose. The responsibility is that great, the sheer spiritual poverty of anthropocentric salvation, that is the teaching that Christ is given for people alone and all other life, however lovely, is expendable. That makes no sense other than on some distant planet B, other than our own, where no one need be confronted with the absolute interdependence of all life, be they predators or prey, fauna or flora. There are, of course, times when it doesn't seem to matter if we temporarily lose touch with the origins and the spiritually utilitarian purpose of our festivals because the parties remain. And maybe that's both the strength and weakness of Climate Sunday. It sounds respectably useful. You're doing it this week, though it also sounds like something thought up for a purpose. It lacks the celebratory, self-perpetuating deep-rootedness of Christmas, Easter, Pentecost, which we need to make green. In my own journey of faith, I'd add to that Passover. A Christian Passover supper in Cars Lane United Reformed Church in Birmingham gave me a decisive experience of inclusion. And that was very traditional, the strict stipulation that everyone under your roof, irrespective of their origins, should be treated as part of the family. That happened for me, and I'm still here. Does it seem too frivolous to suggest that we need to celebrate, to party, to enjoy being human in tandem with the very serious business of reflection on environmental emergencies? Just as where churches look for environmental actions and initiatives, the ones they are going to stick with and the ones they're going to sustain are the ones they enjoy and that build them up to encouragement, particularly as followers of Jesus, we recall his very human and vulnerable desperation to enjoy Passover before the crisis of the cross. Let no delusions prevent you from tanking up on the refreshment of nature and countryside and every refreshment of the natural world, all the more because you will love it more. At a Passover supper, you gorge on the lamb. You drink deeply, not just a nip at a shot glass. How do we get across this message of a thorough, wholesome, utterly urgent preparation to build our resilience for our ability to navigate and engage the rough channels of the rest of our lives? And I'm not exaggerating, I'm not scaremongering. This year is our training ground. This year is our chance to learn to take notice. If we get through this year and learn something from it, that is a blessing. Passover regulations, as we heard, mitigate against complacency. The tradition is observed by the trappings of urgency rather than relaxed reassurance. The cooking is ample and filling, but it's also very rough and ready. There are concessions to poverty, but the concessions are strictly to make sure that the people celebrate and that all are included, rather than simply to water anything down or just for the sake of convenience. Concessions ensure respect for the festival rather than letting anyone think that it doesn't really matter. But even going through the motions of the festival ensures that the story is told. It's there in the back of your mind, waiting for the bells finally to ring, for meaning to dawn. So what is to be prioritized in the observances of faith? What is to be prioritized in the Christian heap of special Sundays, to which Climate Sunday and Creation Time or Season of Creation seem to be adding? Try this. Faithfulness, obedience, devotionalism, piety are now characterized in this. Readiness to shift, and shift everything. The schooled decisiveness to cash in the chips of all that's been set aside for a rainy day. Those are the defining virtues that these ancient ritual instructions aim to inculcate, and by their repetition, indefinitely to refresh until such time as they are needed again. It's a feast and a fulsome one. There's no waste, no leftovers. This is how you shall eat it.
Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly. It is the Passover of the Lord.
And you shall eat it hurriedly. Without exception, the greatest impact of today, Climate Sunday, and the weeks and months ahead that you might well devote to deepening your spiritual awareness of climate emergency and the place and purpose of your faith, will be in transforming yourself, your spirituality, your prayer life, and the ways in which until now that might have excluded the voice of the earth, just as the voice of the poor has been so easy to sideline. though Jesus in Matthew 25 most sternly makes clear that how the voices that are not heard are treated is an absolute measure of faithfulness to him, to God, to goodness. Be awake, be alert, be ready, and remember, as a matter of faith, to celebrate, to nourish yourself, your faith, your community. The world needs your commitment now more than ever in prayer, in action, and in being what God made you to be.